Now, this morning I want to land and get a message that is going to usher us into another space. All of us are looking forward to seeing what God will be doing. And all our friends following up through live streaming, once again join and participate in the service. We want to talk today on the topic, journeying with God. That will be our message today, and I want you to be ready to learn. So a pastor in town called me if I could allow Pastor Pilani to go and minister, which I did. So he's out of church because he's ministering on our behalf in a church right here in town, which is very good to do. Now, for some of us who have had the privilege of getting around very, very old people, we know the advantage of sitting around someone who's been around the block for a long time. 8 years of age, 90. Through the ups and downs of life, the good and the bad, the ugly, they've learned one or two things. That if you're patient enough and you know how to ask good questions, these elderly people are literally encyclopedia of life. And the reason why being elderly people is important, because you can shortcut things that took them years and years and achieve them in a good time, because they've accumulated wisdom and they know how you can get it done without going through all they've gone through. And such a guy is Joshua. The story of Joshua is a very, very interesting. We can just do a whole teaching on the person of Joshua, his character. Incredible guy. You know, he grew up as a child into slavery because his great-grandparents were slaves into Egypt. And then all he knew all his life up to age 40 was how to be a slave. He saw his dad and mom leaving early in the morning and going to do bricks, going to do this. All the pyramid that are standing up is an effort of a Jewish boy, Jewish girls, parents who will work long hours, inordinate amount of energy for next to nothing. Joshua grew up in that environment. He didn't know what it means to have a mind of yourself, to dream about things you can become, because the best you can become is to be a nice slave. And then God showed up. It's another lesson in Joshua's life. What seems to be impossible became possible. 430 years of slavery in one night turned around. The mighty Nile, that was a terror of any human being, split. Israel walked on dry ground. Joshua is part of that movement. He's 40. He learns that there's a devil, but he learns as well there's a God. And he learns that there's a God who is mightier and stronger than the devil. And he learns between the devil and God, there's a human being who is the centerpiece of that epic warfare. As they crossed the Nile and went into the deserts of Padam Aram and other deserts, 3 or 4 of them that they walked through, Joshua learned something as well. Human beings are strange people. You can do the best of the best and be surprised with the worst of human beings. Joshua now is growing older, wiser, and he sees Moses' heart broken to the response of people to the goodness of God. He witnessed Korah, that's an Abiram, condemning the innocent families because of reckless behavior. and the earth opening up and swallowing all families. Those events leave a mark in your soul at the deepest level. He gets to Peor and he sees in one split second this amazing, gracious God killed 22,000 people because of idolatry. And Joshua is marked. Eventually, the mighty Moses could not make it because God killed him. Joshua is 80. Finally, his feet were the first to trample on the Jordan River. And he sees the Jordan becoming like a wall, and people cross under his leadership, and the walls of Jericho that seems to be impenetrable come crumbling down. Israel, a former bunch of slaves, finally is a nation. So the back end of his 30 years of life, he spends on warfare for 13 years, encouraging people to not be lazy, to do this, and he just learns a lot. And Joshua is 110. He feels deep down, without precision, but something in him goes, I don't have long to live. And he does his last in Daba. Collects Israel from all over the regions and say, come, let me talk to you for the last time. This is a speech of 110. It's a lot. And I can imagine Joshua that night tossing and cannot sleep because it's a huge, huge meeting, the last hurrah of his speech, and you have to be very selective. That's the biggest difference between a younger preacher and a seasoned preacher. Because for a younger preacher, whatever is exciting, you have to be told. But for the older preacher, what is important? So Joshua has to cut everything and get to the core of what you want to explain and say, if anything else is forgotten under my leadership, the leadership of Moses, what you've gone through in the wilderness, in Egypt, this one thing should never be forgotten. And he talks to us in chapter 24. Let's see, from verse 1 all the way to 18, Joshua. Vukosi is not attending, so Robert, you're doing the reading. Robert will replace. These are musicians, they're supposed to be talking and knowing how to read. Let's follow the reading. It's long. We don't want to go with the whole church because it becomes too slow to finish.
Joshua 24, verse 1. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your forefathers, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the river and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the river and laid him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your fathers out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the desert for a long time. I brought you to the land of the Amorites, who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them from before you, and you took possession of the land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam. So he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you, as did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites, but I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you. Also the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil, and cities you did not build, and you live in them and eat from the vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to save other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our fathers up out of Egypt, from that land of slavery, and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among all the nations through which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God.
What a reading. What a reading. This is the last conversation of an elderly leader who will be dying in a few weeks. And he decided to select out of 70 years, or 70 years to be precise, of a journey with God, what is important to live in the heart of the next generation. Me too, I know prophetically that September is a critical month as a shift where Ramah is moving from promises to obtaining. Where Ramah is shifting from potentially to here it is. There are a few things I want to share with the church of greatest importance. Church is never buildings and chairs. Church is always people. You are the church. We are the church. What is Joshua teaching? What is he trying to tell us exactly? This is the biggest truth of your life, of my life, that you have to learn. Choices make a tremendous difference in the course of life. Never neglect the power of choosing, because you are a product of your choices. If you didn't choose, your parents chose where you are. Even those who say, I'm neutral, I will never do anything, not choosing to choose, it's choosing to not to choose. You still choose. And the truth about choice is, whatever choice you make, sooner or later, you will reap from your choices. Some, because of your choices, you have condemned yourself to work for someone for the rest of your life. Some, because of your choices, you have made sure that the next generation and that the generation that will come will never suffer lack even once. Some, because of your choices, you will live with shame and a secret that will never reveal, because it will haunt you until you go to the grave, wishing it never happened. Choices have real consequences. Now, the thing about choice, it doesn't just affect you as an individual, it affects families. So many times I would say, parents who choose to live a life of stinginess have condemned kids to be stingy, to put value on what should never be valuable. Parents who live openly in criticizing and gossiping and running down other names have just condemned the generation that will be plagued by that low kind of life. Many times, if you're honest and in your own conscience, there are things you do and say you don't want to do and say them. But you find yourself doing and saying them because of where you came from. Choices are serious. Because they don't just affect you, they affect your family, but not only your family, they affect as well the next generation. I thought about choices. Some countries chose to live properly, obey the rules that run nations, and became great. One of those greatest of all, not one, but the greatest country in terms of the power that the passport carries, it's Canada. Canadian citizens can go up to 90% of the countries of the world without a visa. Not to say that all Canadians are good guys, but all Canadians come from a good country. A choice of the forefathers of Canada have made it possible for Canadians, even the crook ones, to go without a visa. But if you had the bad luck to be born in Somalia, Somalian passports cannot make it to 90% of countries in the world. You can have the most moral, the most nicest Somalian. The fact that he's carrying a Somalian passport is condemned. Choices have real consequence. Learn to choose right. Learn to choose smartly. Therefore, as you begin to journey with God, there must come a moment in time when you make the most important choice in your life. And this was the question Joshua asked to the congregation. Who are you going to revere? Who are you going to serve? Coming to church is not serving God. Being a member of a department, of a section, is not serving God. Preaching beyond the pulpit is not serving God. I can be preaching, serving me under the name of God. Only motive of a deep heart knows why I'm doing what I'm doing. Choose today. This is the issue that Joshua is raising. Whoever you revere is the one that you are going to serve. If all that matters a lot to you is you, you will serve you using God. Because if the church people served God, we will have less problems in church. We fight, we divide, we don't talk to each other under the umbrella of being people of God. What people of God is that? Because when you begin to scratch, beyond the activities of church is serving something else. An idol of some sort. Me, money, fame, anything that you can serve. And Joshua goes, I walked with God for a long, long time. I was in Egypt as a child of a slave. I saw what happened. I watched God do the impossible, the unthinkable. I saw the same good God killing thousands and thousands of his own people. I saw mighty Moses missing it out. I saw the walls of Jericho coming down. Here I am today. A people who was not a people is a people with a land. But I've learned something in journeying with God. You must make a choice. So today, before we move into the blessing and stuff, my last preaching to you, before we move into the next phase of our church, choose what are you going to do with the blessing God will give to you. Who are you going to serve with those blessings? Choose you today. I had to ask myself a deep question. Who is really, really the champion of my life? Removing the mask of the bishops and pastors and all sorts of stuff, and then just an honest and sincere man in front of a mirror, and I say, who is the champion of my life? If it's not King Jesus, I need to go to square one. Reconsider. The church have moved into very treacherous space where Jesus is used and abused. It's fashionable now to use Jesus as an ATM. Therefore, the church is specialized into capricious people, or give deadlines to Almighty God to do certain things. If I don't, I have a choice to leave or to quit. Because if I respect him deeply, I will serve him sincerely. That's the little message that Joshua is giving. The first thing that Joshua is establishing is you cannot journey with God from your perspective. You always journey with God from his perspective. Can two walk together if they don't agree? No. Any relationship of any sort, even if it lasts very long, the moment we don't agree anymore, that's the end of the relationship. We can patch it up, we can stay in the same bedroom, we can stay in the same house, but the hearts are not celebrating each other anymore. What is important to God should be important to us. Because the moment I begin to value and celebrate what God values and celebrate, I can walk with God for a long, long time. Here are the big things. Number one is church. Brothers and sisters, the church of Jesus Christ is not just a place where people go, lock themselves for 2 or 3 hours, sing songs, go home, and listen to preaching. The church of Christ is the bride of Christ. The church is the bride of the Son of Almighty God. The more you put value on the church, the more God smiles on you. Smart living is living around, organizing around. How can I be a blessing to the church? Joshua 24 starts with very simple words but powerful. All of you assemble at Shechem. What's up with Shechem? This is the place where when God called Abraham for the first time from Iraq, where he was an idol worshiper, we just read right now, and he moved with him to Genesis 12. It was in the land of Shechem. When he told him, Abraham, I will bless you so that you can become a blessing to others. It was in the land of Shechem for the first time that when Abraham heard the voice of God, he took an altar and built it and worshiped God for the first time. Because altars are nothing else than a connection between the divine and human. That's what is the story of the church. Churches all over the world are in reality memorials. These are things that God has put as mighty elements of education. What is the purpose of any memorial? Memorials work in 3 dimensions. One is to reveal something. When you come to church, you come to get the mind of God on certain matters. What are you saying, God? But 2, church is a place of reminder. Therefore, when you come to church, it's not every Sunday that you have a new thing. Some of the stuff you've heard 100 times. The reason why God is reminding us is because he knows memory leaks. Sometimes I laugh, I look at, all my armor bearers and, they will not take notes now. They're taking note. That's why I'm using that example. And I go, you're trusting your brain so much. But the truth is, just when you leave church, you will not even remember the title of the message. What was the bishop talking about? Oh, something very nice. It was a tough word. So those tough words, amazing words, is a way of escaping because I don't remember. Therefore, our Chinese brothers are very smart. They say short pencil is better than a long memory. What they're teaching us, write down. And the third purpose of any memorial is to realign. Any driver of cars, from time to time, they will tell you after 6 months of driving, take your car for checking again if the wheels are still aligned. Because if the wheels are not aligned, they begin to pull and they begin to wear quickly. So you have just to go for routine, for realignment. If it's okay, thumbs up. If it's not, then, just fix it and then you are fine with your tires. That's what church is important. We come to church to get a revelation. We come to church to be reminded. We come to church to be realigned. But the second thing that is important to God is leaders. Never underestimate the power of a spiritual leader. Never. Leaders play a major role. Because all leaders are guiding light. Remember what Jesus said? If the light in you is darkness, our darkness. How dark are your darkness? Leadership of any sort has a huge impact on the way people live. The other day, which was yesterday, in our hotel room, we're just talking and, we watched. No, it wasn't in a hotel. Actually, at church itself. We're still in the blue room, a green room rather, and then we're watching, what was going on in the main auditorium. And Mama noticed that all the men, almost, in Grace, they didn't have hair. Then I thought, no, all of them are not bald, like, Bishop's son. Because the leader doesn't have hair, let's cut our hair, even what exists. Leadership is a bizarre thing. You don't tell people to behave in a certain way. You don't tell people to do certain things, but they just become. You go to Chicago, there's Bill Hybels, one of the richest church in the world. If hundreds and hundreds of millionaires, all of them are in shirts, short sleeves, because the leader wears short sleeves, doesn't wear suit. You go to Dallas. You go to Porter's house. Every man, tie and suit. Because Bishop T.D. Jakes is wearing tie and suit. You go to Australia. Brian is in jeans, torn, flippers. How do you call this thing? Tackies and stuff, slippers. And everybody looks like a poor guy. Because the pastor looks like poor. It is the influence of a leader. That is physical. But never neglect the unseen influence of a leader called spiritual. A leader who tampers with the balance in a spiritual arena have condemned the church. What has happened to your papa and mama that have turned you to be the way you are, believe me, it's 10 times more when you sit under a leader. Because his spirit flows through the organization. So therefore, when a leader begins to play with sin, the umbrella that covers the church is torn. People are going to be wet, whether they like it or not. What is the smart thing to do as a church member? Pray for your leaders. Because kingdom understand very well and the devil understand very well. If you can tamper with the balance where it matters, it's a matter of time before the church goes down. Any person who has been in church for a long time, do not worry if there are issues in the church. So-and-so this, so-and-so. It's just part of the breathing and rhythm of life. But you begin to worry very much when problems begin to pop up in leadership. You know the devil is right here. Israel will sin. The nation will keep moving forward. Miriam and Aaron sinned. The nation was stopped for 3 months. No movement forward. Moses sinned. Israel camped for 1 year. Right there. Achan sinned. His entire clan paid the price. A leader's mistake become a leading mistake. Never forget. Zechariah chapter 13, 7b. Let's look at the whole principle of leadership. Can you give it to us, please? Would you read with me, please, if you don't mind? Stop. One more time. That's a principle of leadership. Get the leader, and the organization will be scattered. That's all. As long as it doesn't get to the leader, you are still safe. Hello? Dr. Joshua is an old wise man. In chapter 23 already, days before he calls the whole congregation, he said, "Leader, I want you first in Shechem." And then when the people came, they joined the leaders who were already there. Why? Because if a leader is fixed, the organization is fixed. And then Paul would say, imitate me as I do imitate Christ. The crisis of our generation is not any other crisis, it's a crisis of leadership. Because leadership is not positional, it is functional. And the primary function of a leader is not to give instruction, but is to be a model. Brothers and sisters in Ramah, as we enter a space where we have never been before, exactly as Israel have gone from Egypt to the Red Sea, to the desert, to Jericho, and then establish themselves eventually, churches go through phases. Spiritual and invisible, but they're real. But when you come into your own, the first thing to fix is leadership. Because a gathering force is normal. I'm a premier, you're a premier, he's a premier. Who is boss of which premier? Because that's the issue that Jesus was dealing with before he left. Who is the greatest among us? And Jesus goes, no, my kingdom doesn't work on great. It works on service. Even if officially you don't carry a title, if you serve, in the eyes of God, you're a stronger leader than the one who carries the title. Pray for our leaders. I beg you. These people sitting here, all over, at the back, wherever they are, pray for the leaders. Never underestimate my plea with you, church. The unthinkable tends to happen many times in churches. Read Isaiah 14. Read Ezekiel 38. You will be surprised that when Lucifer fell, heaven was in shock. What? No. Lucifer never. Talk to me about another angel, not this one. I said, but it's Lucifer, exactly. The one you saw yesterday, it's happened today. Why is it? Because the more the church goes up, leadership enters the thin air, where balance through principle become more important than emotions. It's important. Pray for the leaders. I say it again. Pray for the leaders. We owe it to God for Ramah to be alive. Pray for the leaders. Number 3, what is important to God? His people. You are everything God has to do what you want to do. Without the people of God, God cannot do much on earth because he needs his people to do what he wants to do. You are salt and light. Let your light so shine so that people may glorify your Father who is in heaven. Nobody will know God except through us. So therefore, when you come to church, the person next to you should be valued. So Joshua establishes in the mind of his people that what is important to God is his church, his leaders, and his people. If you look around and begin to understand what's going on, buildings and cameras and all these, as important as they are because we need them really in a very good shape and stuff, they facilitate work. But the trick and the secret of church, it is the people at any level. So therefore, a church that wants to move with God into dimension of glory never heard before, it is a church that needs to begin to deal with the issue of people relationship, vertically and horizontally. What am I saying? These are the words of Joshua, just a couple of months before his death. The very last preaching in his life is this one. But the second thing Joshua is teaching us, as you journey with God, not only you have to understand things that are important to God, but the second thing that you have to do, you must learn to see God in 3D. Hello? I've done a little bit of few things with Yassev and other architects, Folio is one of them. When they put the drawing on a paper and give you a blueprint of what is going to come, it doesn't make sense. Because they're just lines and numbers and figures and stuff. So if you're not clued up with that, it means nothing. But when they take the same picture and they put it in 3D and they begin to show it on a computer, even if I'm not in a house physically, but through the computer I begin to see the reality of what I will touch. It changes my motivation. And Joshua is telling the people, until you learn to see God in 3D, you will never be able to journey with God properly. Let's discover those dimensions of God. Number one, you must learn to see God in history. This is major. Whether you drive a small car that costs nothing, or a very, very big, expensive car, one thing that cars share in common, every car has a rear mirror. Because you cannot just go forward without from time to time picking back to see where you're coming from. If you cannot look back and see God in history, you will never deal with God properly in the present. You will certainly betray God in the future. This is the message that Joshua is telling these people. Hey, I will be gone, but God will not be gone. And I know how human beings function because I saw them in Egypt. I saw them in the wilderness. I saw them for 20 years, almost 30 years in this land. I know. If you don't fix in your spirit what God is and who He is in the history, you will betray me in the future. What are we learning? Would you read with me this? It's so important that I want us to read. 1, 2, 3. Never forget it. When you study history, what you're studying is just where human beings have developed, things they faced, how they've become victorious, how they've done this, how did they achieve success to be to where they are. That's what history is all about. It's just a progress of mankind over time. But it's not just a lesson. It is deeper than that. Because the first part is easy. Most of us have studied history, we know. The second part is what misses in a lot of people. History has one major objective: to refocus your mind on the principle of first cause. Let me do it. Gentlemen, are you still studying or have you graduated? You're working. So you finished your studies. Who are you working for?
Defense Force.
Defense. Good. So you went to school for you to be a member of Defense Force, right? Good. You're a good candidate. Would you stand up if you don't mind? Soldiers are bold. Soldiers are not cowards. This is how the law or the principle of first cause works. Were you born in military?
No.
You're born like any other baby in a maternity, doing funny stuff.
Yes.
You became a military. So from babyhood to manhood, from a child in a cradle to a man in a defense, there's a history. Someone didn't sleep through the night to make sure you don't die when you're sick. Someone faced your smelling poo All of us. I have to be honest. For you to be in good health. Someone worked thankless jobs, scrimping 2,000 rand or 1,000 rand a month to make sure that this child of mine doesn't miss for anything. Someone dreamed for you before you dream for yourself. That if I can send him to school, he will have a good future. Someone paid the ultimate price for you to be where you are. And Joshua will turn to Israel and say, if today you used to be slaves, you own a land flowing with milk and honey, never forget who took you from where you were to where you are. Come on. Come on, you can do better than that. Come on, you can do better than that. Yes, church. Listen. A curse of a child is to be big and remove a rear mirror. A curse of a child is suddenly you have a house, you have a car, you have people working for you, and you forgot that when you didn't know anything about yourself, somebody taught you to be you. A cursed child is a child who despises his parents. Because the Bible says, honor your father and mother, not your best father and mother. As long as the papa and mama remember, for you to be who you are, somebody took you from the past. You didn't become a military. Your parent might have never made it in the army, but they paid the price for you to be where you are. I saw this lady, run up and down Angola, left Nazna for these boys to be who they are with your wife. Never forget your mama. That's a curse of a child. To grow so big that you thought you made yourself. Really? Israel, if it have to go well for you, remember where it started. Your father Abraham was an idol worshiper. God took him from there for you to be where you are. Those are the last words of 110-year, 2 months from death, speaking to a congregation. Thank you, my son. Let me keep talking. You know what? What is true for your biological parent is true for your spiritual parent. Regardless of what flavor comes to town, never forget, for almost 25 years, this lady and this man held the ladder, made sure that Ramah is still Ramah, for you to be where you are. Never. Never forget. Never forget. I said it last Sunday. He was here. The Henry and all these people, all of them, these were kids, all of them didn't know from Adam where to find Genesis and Revelation, how to put them together and be a preacher. Now you're a preacher. You go from a pulpit and insult me sitting. That's a curse of a child. Whatever title you carry in this church, I called you to that title. Don't turn it into biting my hands. We spoke about Mama. And she was telling me stuff that happened when my dad passed on. How some of my siblings were just saying stuff they should never say to Mama in 88. And I remember and I told her, I never crossed Mama even once. Never resist her, never said something wrong, privately or publicly. Could it be certain things happen because of certain things that we do? Will you be Henry's wife? If Mama Justine wasn't your mama? Really? And suddenly, Justine is not good enough? That's the curse of a child. Because God never told you, honor your father and mother who are perfect. They're your parent. That's what it is. We live in a generation that have lost it. Your parents are talking, you go, leave me alone. Really? Leave me alone. That gesture of your hand, you have removed yourself from the memory of the blessing. Joshua is talking, his last speech is to refocus Israel from where all it started. Abraham didn't start a Christian. He was an idol worshiper. God picked him from there. I'll sit in meetings sometimes and hear, when you call someone an older, he's older for real. Because I can hear that this one is insulting, this one is, punching below the belt. It's me they're aiming at. And I play along, I go, he is exactly right. But even if I say in a meeting is exactly right, she's exactly right, heaven is not applauding you because you are a smart child. Listen, who was drunk? The father. Who took off his clothes? Whose fault is it? Why was the child cursed? Because the nakedness of a father is not your subject to prove that you're better than father.
Yeah. That's right.
All of you Ramah people, you should, especially all the leaders, you should be happy every time you go to your knees. Thank God for me. I grew up in a church with rough pastors. Very, very rough. They will let you preach. First of all, my pastor never gave you a day to prepare. What for? It never happened. At Ramah, it never happened where I grew up. They will let you go through the motion. The songs are going. Just when the band starts singing the last song, you will go say, young man, you know that it's you. No. I go, but what kind of God are you serving who doesn't tell you that you're preaching today? Oh, yes. That's the church I grew up in. And then they will tell you, while the song is finishing, get your preaching ready. So you are literally preparing a message in 3 minutes. And I say, wow. Hallelujah. Especially, the late Bishop Mwamba. We are going to receive a mighty man of God. Brother Tshalo, he's a man of fire, We used to sit that side. I'm going, no. So you go up with your little Bible. You open it and start preaching. 10 minutes into preaching, once you see another leader go to the back, you know it's a problem. You just see one of us go to the back and get this. Stop it. May the Lord bless his word. You go sit, and then he takes back the microphone. He called you man of fire. Go, this young man is a comedian. This guy. You're sitting there, your wife is in church with your little Bible, thousands of people like this. This guy is a comedian. Everything he was preaching is lie. It's not the Bible. Don't even remember what he said. Now I'm going to preach the truth. But you know what? And when the church service is finished, they call you in the office. Young man, how did you feel when we did that to you? My word. And the next day, you have to come to church. And the next day, and the next day. But today, even my son Oliver, I start calling him Tonton because if I call him by name, he will be offended. Now Oliver is my tonton. Tonton means uncle. All of them, the fools of this world, the eagles of this world, something in me forbids me to call them by name for fear of offending. But all of them from the Henrys, name the names, all are juniors. I should be at ease to go ahead, Henry, how are you doing? Do this. But now, you have to walk on eggs in case something happens. This boy is not just a pastor in church. This is a child I carried in these arms. He's not a pastor, he's a son to me. So whatever happened, Papa is Papa.
Yes. That's right. Yeah.
If you cannot, this child, your wedding was the first wedding, remember, in this church? You were a child, exactly the same age with this. Papa is Papa.
Yeah.
That behavior we're taking from West is not godly, it's demonic. To this day, we decided we're going to honor our biological and spiritual parent. To this day, we do it. We have one mama left. She will never blink her eyes, think about something. Actually, she calls me prophet. Because she said, when I need something, Papa calls from Cape Town and says, I need to do this. Because my heart is with her. We have one spiritual parent left. Via Major. There will not come a time when I go. Any money, anything you need, anytime. If I need to borrow, it's for you that I will borrow. Not because they're broke, because it's kingdom principle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But you know why we don't do it? The principle of first cause is forgotten. You don't give to your parents because they don't have. You give to your parents because it's the only right thing to do. As much as T.D. Jakes and Benny, and I love them and I follow them a lot, listen, these are uncles. They come in town and, give you good food, and you're all excited. But who is going to be cleaning your nappies all the time? And that is nothing to you? My father-in-law was like Elder Michel. He will say a word and keep quiet for months and months until you really push him a lot. And when we decided to build them a house, that was the first time I saw him cry, and the only time. And he said this word, Papa Tshalo, may the Lord you are serving give you bigger and many than what you did for me. Those were the last words for my father-in-law. The next time I heard, he was dead already. And you know what? The prayer of that 86-year-old man worked. Bigger and many. Never forget. You cannot worship God properly if you don't see where God took you from. Never. We become too big for God. These PhDs, you should be even more grateful to God. You could have gone crazy any time in your studies for overreading. He kept your mind sane. And now, my PhD title will make me not serve God. The devil is a liar. David says I'll become even more undignified. I'll bring my Lamborghini. I'll bring my Ferrari. I'll bring my Maserati to church all the time. Because it's the God of the church who made me who I am. Number two. Not number two. Few things. We don't have time to go in detail with them. Father Abraham began to table 5 acts of grace that God have shown to the people of Israel. He said, number one, God called you. He chose you. It's the biggest grace. He didn't have to choose you. He chose you anyway. I still maintain until I go to the grave. Serving God is the biggest privilege in my life. God wasn't in a crisis that if Tshalo doesn't preach, nobody else will. If he doesn't lead, nobody else will. It's too God to overlook me. So therefore, I serve him, begging him for the privilege of serving. The second act of grace God has shown to our life, he delivered us. Israel was in slavery. God set you free. 3, he led you. You didn't know how to make it to the promised land. He took you through the wilderness. 4, he fought your battles. Throughout the deserts, into Canaan, Israel was fighting. Even in Egypt with Pharaoh. But every battle, God who didn't need to fight, fought for you. I was telling our friend in the early service, if you knew how many tokoloshes are coming to choke you when you're sleeping, you will never sleep anymore. When you wake up in the morning, it's grace. Something can go wrong at night. There's a man of God who passed on. It's just a pity. Why did he die? As he died, his neck went in the wrong position, and he didn't breathe properly. And I don't know what has happened. Just that moment of not breathing, he died. And here you are. You woke up in the morning, still breathing. Could have been you. Your neck just goes in that position, and you're gone. Or tell your neighbor, I know you. You pretend it's not you. God is nothing to you. It's okay. It's okay. And then, not only God fought your battles, he blessed you as well. Let's move this thing to a close. Number 2, you have to see God in the present. It helps you know where God took you from, but it helps you know what is God doing now. Because the activities of God in your life are not necessarily money and stuff. There are many things that God is doing. Just the fact of being peaceful. It's the work of God. Hello? God not only made us a new creation, but he's also busy doing for us daily new and wonderful things. We sing a little song, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. New every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Until my spirit begins to realize God is faithful, I will always be unfaithful to God. His church, his leaders, his people are the most important. Where he took me from should dictate how I respond to him. What he's busy doing for me should lead me to be faithful to him, because all through God is just faithful. But you have also to learn to see God in the future. Those are the 3 Ds. The past, when you didn't know him, his hand was with you. The present, now that you know him, his hand is upon you. But in the future, something important is going to come. Would you raise your right hand? Don't raise the left one, right. Raise it as high as you can. Thank you so much. And I want you to turn it this way and face the inside of your hand. Look into it very, very intensely. Do you? Because you're looking at that inside of your hand, does it say the back side is not real? Just turn it around. Thank you. What is the point? This is the point. The Lord's return and reward, as sure as the back of your hand is, so the Lord will come. Every time you want to doubt that there's a Lord we are awaiting into the future, look into your hand and say, because I see only this, it doesn't nullify the truth of that. Jesus is coming soon. He's coming with his reward. Two verses, and then we will be landing. I want you to look at 2 Samuel chapter... No. Look at 1 Corinthians 15, 58. 1 Corinthians 15, 58. 1, 2, 3. Whatever you do for the Lord is never in vain. Never. But it takes to be for the Lord. Look at 2 Corinthians 5:10. This is quite some verse. 1, 2, 3. Bazex. 4. No, read it for your neighbor. You know, your neighbor is really, really a problem. 4. Listen, this is the way I read this verse. Whether you like to appear or not, you will appear. Whether you bind it in a spirit, you kick it out appearing, you will appear. Now, we will all appear before that. Tell your neighbor, each one, that's you. Tell your neighbor, yeah. So that each one for the things done while you are living in this body. Now, what are the things? Whether, which means whatever you do, good or bad, Jesus is returning. And there's a reward. Some reward are reward for shame, for eternally in shame. Think about it. Oh, no one is seeing me. It's okay, nobody sees you. Jesus is returning. You know, I learned something with technology. You know, the guys who bombed the airport of Zaventem in Brussels, nobody saw them when it happened. But the cameras saw them. They were watching, tracking even the guy who was running, and eventually they put their hand on him. Let me announce to you, there are cameras in heaven watching your every move. On that day, God will go. Okay, Bishop Tshalo, sit here. The leadership seat. That girl, was she a member of your church? Yes. Okay, today is her turn to watch a video. Project. We saw you appearing. Say, ooh, this is what you used to do. The Bible says, whatever you do in this body, Jesus is returning. He will reward each one for good or bad. When you journey with God, never forget. How do we finish this? We finish with what is important. Let's read one more time, verse 14, and then we close. 14 is the centerpiece of Joshua's exhortation. Joshua 24, 14. 1, 2, 3. Fear the Lord and serve the Lord. That's the summary of what Joshua learned a simple truth about walking with God. So if you want the best from God, respect him deeply, serve him with all your heart. Is it hard to do? God doesn't complicate life, he makes it easier. Fear the Lord and serve him. Remove other idols. Let God be the only true God. What are we saying? Write these things down. Number one, serving God is a matter of personal choice with far-reaching impact. When you serve the Lord, it's because you choose to serve the Lord. Nobody will force you. Nobody will push you to do it against your will. You will have to choose to do so. But you cannot serve a Lord whom you don't respect. That's what the Bible says, revere the Lord and serve him. Because heaven knows, whatever you despise, you will not serve. Number two, serving the Lord requires forsaking other gods. I said it already. I can be preaching, but preaching for money. For you, it's preaching, but heaven knows my motive. I can be studying, but not studying to help humanity. Studying for people to know I carry this degree. Until you fix your motive, activities are not major. You cannot serve God and mammon. 3, serving God takes courage of conviction. You must be convicted in your heart that this is the only right thing to do, regardless of how costly it is. Number 4, serving God is the principle of blessing. It's in serving God that you are blessed. Because if you take care of what God takes care of, he will take care of you. Serving God is a result of gratitude. Are we together? On that one, I want us to read. I really, really want. So give me 2 Samuel. Chapter 7. Verse 8. 2 Samuel 7:8. Quickly. 1, 2, 3. I took you from, and to whatever you have, whatever job you have, whatever qualification you have, God took you from to give it to you. Psalm 116, verse 12. Psalm 116 and verse 12. 1, 2, 3. That should be an intelligent way to live. Because God has been so good to me, how can I repay him? By being faithful to God. And doing all you can that the purpose of God do not suffer. All right? And then the next one, we serve the Lord as a function of wisdom. Because you've come to discover all other gods are the works of man. The only true God is worthy to be served is our God. And then finally, serving God is a mark of humility. The humble one is the easier it is to serve God. The proud fool someone is, the tougher it is to serve the Lord. Because proud people sit at the center of the throne. Have you learned something?